Hello there again from the Hermitage in Johannesburg. Without hope, life becomes meaningless, dreary, grey monotony, a cycle of familiar and recurring events. Many now face this reality without the diversion of their daily toil. Others also face this reality without the diversions of the rich and famous. We most certainly are not all in the same boat, yet we all face the same tempest. We must have hope. In these dark times, we remember the promise of Jesus at the Last Supper. Let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If not, I would have told you, because I go to prepare a place for you. The hope that springs from our faith is expressed as a coming together as a community of common believers to express that hope and thanksgiving, our joy in the gospel. As the community of believers, the church is the assembly of all who believe in Jesus the Christ. Our fellowship of all who are bound together by their common love for Christ, the Redeemer. The Catholic Church has been defined as a union of human beings who are united by the profession of the same Christian faith, and by participation of and in the same sacraments. At the Second Vatican Council, this concept of church was qualified subjectively so as to include all who are baptized and profess their faith in Jesus the Christ. They are the people of God, whom God has chosen to be God's own, and on whom he bestows the special graces of his providence. Today's Gospel reading from Matthew was coined in the 16th or 17th century as the Great Commission. There is a long-standing and often acrimonious debate in regard to the exegesis, hermeneutics, and the polemics that have been used, or depending on your own view, abused, by the proponents of missionary activity coupled to slavery, conquest, and colonization. Literary, historical, and textual criticism and philological analysis mean little for the people of today in their everyday struggle of life. In this pandemic lockdown situation, we have all become an introvert community, brooding over security, survival, and prosperity. As a microcosm of the world community, we as church face our own existential crisis. Throughout the world, this coming together as a community to express our faith that gives us hope has been deemed as non-essential. This has been aggravated by the reality of runaway infections inherent in the nature of our coming together, our greetings and affections, our sacraments, and our communion. Pope Francis reminds us today that the Ascension doesn't indicate the absence of Jesus, but rather tells us that he is living among us in a new and universal way. Christ with us in a new and universal way. An extraordinary prayer in the time of pandemic was held on the night of the 27th of March, streamed live, online, but with an eerily empty St. Peter's Square. As the Pope knelt in prayer before the Blessed Sacrament, I felt an urgent need to accompany the Pope in this heavy burden that was upon him. As I knelt in my own little hermitage chapel, I felt not only a participation, but also a union with this frail old man, a union of souls that is the inherent quality of every sacrament that leads us into that liminal space of transformation. My experience of online masses has, however, not reflected this participation, union or communion. Something just doesn't quite gel. It is almost as though clericalism has found its highest expression. It is perhaps the underlying, unspoken statement that from here, from this church, and through this priestly performance, holiness and sanctity is being streamed into our homes. Pope Francis recently spoke of such online Eucharistic celebrations, creating a Gnostic familiarity, but not community. Many years ago, as chaplain at the Pretoria University, I received an early morning telephone call from one of the students. He was calling me on his mobile phone from an ambulance after having been involved in a terrible car accident. Fearful of death and damnation, this young person made his confession online, and I spoke the words of absolution, the words of God's mercy and compassion. The Church today speaks to us of this new and universal way, a new plenary indulgence to those around the world affected by the coronavirus. For persons near death from the virus and unable to receive the sacraments because of isolation measures, the decree says they can obtain the indulgence at the point of death, as long as they have recited some prayers during their life. If any particular or single sacrament can become such an instrument of God's love without direct physical connection, perhaps all sacraments must carry this same power of God's transcendent ability. Perhaps now is the time to look beyond law and discover those links between our faith and science when it comes to such transcendent liminal moments, moments beyond time and space, moments of participation, of union, of communion. A new and universal way of hope. Small communities formed by and with those neighbours around us, coming together in solidarity and prayer, coming together to share then and there, in their homes, in that bread and wine, to share then and there, in that homes, the body and blood of Jesus the Christ, that transcends time and space. For Jesus has said to us, as he said to the apostles, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never hunger, and whoever believes in me will never thirst. Initially there may be much longing for those days that are past, and those great gatherings in the great cathedrals. Initially there might be great anger and grinding of teeth at the loss of power and the loss of revenue. Yet I believe with patience, compassion, perseverance, a new way forward will be found. Perhaps in this new poverty and vulnerability, we can journey together towards discovering that transcendent power of love, to see with the eyes of God, as God looks upon the good creation, and so fully partake in that participation and union that is the nature of love. This is perhaps a better translation of the Great Commission, to go and proclaim the good news to all of creation. This is a reflection of God's love that extends to all of creation, to all life. Community is indeed where we find it. Now is the universal church present in every space and time, close to each one of us. In our lives we are never alone. We have this advocate who waits us, defends us. We are not alone. With us there are many brothers and sisters who in their family life, in their work, in their problems and difficulties, in the ordinariness of their boredom, in their joys and hopes, daily living the faith that bring together with us God's love into the world. In Jesus the Christ, risen and ascended into heaven, we have an advocate in every corner of space and time, as we have the hope of our own destiny also. The Lord grant you peace.